He shuffled into the courtroom, his steps heavy and uneven, each one echoing like a reminder of how far he had fallen. James Holloway looked like a man who had been beaten by life, a man who had endured every storm only to be left standing in the wreckage with nothing but the clothes on his back. His hoodie was frayed, its sleeves torn and faded from years of wear. His jeans sagged loosely on his frame, worn thin at the knees, and his sneakers were so battered the soles looked ready to peel away. His hair was slightly unkempt, his short scruffy beard speckled with gray, and his eyes, though tired, still carried something deeper, something stronger. But most people didn't see that. Most people didn't look long enough. To them, he was just another homeless man, another shadow, another forgotten story. As James took his place in the courtroom, silence should have followed, respect should have filled the air. But instead, laughter rippled across the polished benches, low chuckles from the gallery that grew louder as eyes fell on his ragged clothes. And then, like venom, the judge's voice cut through the noise. Judge Carter leaned forward from his towering bench, his black robe pristine, his pale skin drawn tight across his stern face. His cold blue eyes narrowed with disgust as his lips curled into a mocking smirk. "Another homeless man wasting my time," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You people never learn." The words hit James like stones, but he didn't flinch. The gallery, however, erupted with cruel laughter, feeding off the judge's arrogance like vultures circling a dying man. Their smug amusement filled the room, their eyes dancing with superiority. To them, James was nothing but entertainment, an easy target to mock. Even the court clerk, shuffling through paperwork at her desk, kept her head down, her professional calm hiding the unease that stirred deep inside her. James stood silent, his shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed on the floor. To anyone watching, he looked broken, as though the judge's words had crushed whatever was left of him. But inside, beneath the weight of humiliation and years of loss, something steady burned, something unshakable, something no sneer, no robe, no gavel could destroy. The judge leaned back in his chair, smirking as though he had already won. He had spent years wielding power like a weapon, lording over the weak, humiliating those who couldn't fight back. To him, this was just another day, another chance to remind the forgotten of their place, another reminder that in his courtroom he was king. But then James lifted his head, his tired eyes, though heavy with sorrow, burned with quiet determination, and his voice, steady and sharp, cut through the laughter like a blade. "Your Honor, check the court records under James Holloway." The room went still. The laughter died in an instant, replaced by confusion. The judge's smirk faltered, but arrogance kept him from losing composure. He scoffed, his voice sharp. "And what exactly am I supposed to find there?" With a dismissive wave of his hand, he gestured toward the clerk. The clerk adjusted her glasses, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for files. Something about the way James spoke had unsettled her. Something about his presence didn't quite match the clothes on his back. She flipped through the stack of folders, pulling one out, her eyes scanning the records inside. And then she froze. Her hazel eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. The weight of what she had discovered seemed too heavy for words. Finally, her voice, shaky but clear, broke the silence. "Your Honor, he's not just anyone. He's a former attorney, a decorated one." And she paused, swallowing hard as her eyes flicked toward James, then back at the judge. "He filed misconduct charges against you." The courtroom gasped as if the very walls had sucked the air out of the room. The audience, who only moments before had laughed and sneered, now sat frozen, their eyes darting between the weary man in tattered clothes and the judge, whose pale face had suddenly gone ghostly white. The arrogance drained from Judge Carter's expression, replaced by something unfamiliar, fear. His lips parted, but no words came. Sweat beaded at his temples. He gripped the wooden bench tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping him from collapsing under the weight of his own corruption. The man he mocked, the man he humiliated in front of everyone, was the very one who had once fought for justice in the same system he had corrupted. James Holloway, not a drifter, not a beggar, not a man lost society, but an attorney who had once been respected, who had once stood in the very same courtroom fighting for truth. James lifted his chin, and the fire in his eyes silenced the last traces of laughter. His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with power. "I may look broken," he said, his words slicing to the heavy air, "but I never lost my integrity. Can you say the same?" The silence that followed was deafening. The gallery, once so eager to mock, now sat in stunned disbelief. Their smug expressions faded into shame, their laughter replaced with uneasy silence. The clerk sat frozen, her eyes locked on the files in front of her, her professional composure shattered by the truth she held. And Judge Carter, once untouchable, once towering over all, now looked small, fragile, exposed. But James wasn't done. He didn't just want to reveal the truth. He wanted them to understand. He told them how he had once been respected, how he had built a career on fighting for the voiceless. He told them about the cases he had won, the communities he had protected, the injustices he had fought to correct. And then, his voice grew heavier as he revealed the price he had paid. He told them how, when he uncovered corruption in the very system that claimed to uphold justice, he didn't stay silent. He brought evidence forward, evidence that pointed to Judge Carter himself. But power doesn't like to be exposed. And in return for his courage, James lost everything. His license revoked, his reputation dragged through the mud, his career destroyed, his home gone. The world labeled him disgraced, while the real disgrace sat in robes, passing judgment as though untouchable. And through it all, James never gave up the one thing they couldn't take, his integrity. The audience shifted uncomfortably, their shame deepening with every word. Whispers spread to the gallery, the realization of their own cruelty pressing down on them. They had laughed at a man who carried scars of sacrifice, who had lost everything because he dared to speak truth to power. And they had sided with the very man who corrupted justice for his own gain. Judge Carter's hand shook as he gripped the bench, his cold blue eyes darting around the room, searching for some escape, some defense. But there was none. His authority, his arrogance, his smirk, all shattered in the face of the man he thought beneath him. The robe on his back, the gavel at his side, none of it could protect him from the truth that now stood exposed before everyone. And then James delivered the final blow. His voice was calm, steady, but sharp as steel. "You mock me for having nothing, but I still have something you'll never have. A conscience that's clean." The room erupted, not with laughter this time, but with gasps, with murmurs, with the sound of chains breaking the hearts of those who realized they had sided with the wrong man. Some clapped, some shook their heads in shame, and others sat in stunned silence, their faith and power crumbling. Judge Carter, red-faced and trembling, sat speechless. For the first time in his career, he had no words, no threats, no authority, only exposure. And James? He didn't need wealth. He didn't need a home. He didn't need a title to stand tall. Because in that moment, he held something far greater than all of it, the truth. And the truth made him stronger than any robe, stronger than any gavel, stronger than any man who believed power made him untouchable. The gallery left that courtroom changed. Some hung their heads in shame. Others carried newfound respect. And Judge Carter? He left not as a man of power, but as a man stripped bare, a man who had been brought low by the very justice he thought he could twist. And in the end, the story of James Holloway became more than just one man's fight. It became a lesson, a warning, a truth that echoed beyond the walls of that courtroom. Never measure a man by his appearance. He may have lost his home, his career, even his comfort. But true strength lies in character. True wealth lies in integrity. And power shifts fast. When truth walks into the room, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories that matter. And let's keep the conversation going.